Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Two Stewards Show.
This is a great show.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Brent had his. What did you have? Your dandelion root tea.
Yeah, I have my dandelion root tea.
Welcome to the Hippie Steward Show.
Hey, you have your Coke. I got my dandelion.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, we're still giddy from our last guest, Jeff Booth. And are we giddy confused. Or are we confused? Yeah.
Mark walked in here this morning with like a big, blank stare on his face. Like, I don't know what I'm.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you have more questions than answers from our last podcast, you're not alone, probably.
And you're just going to have to keep tuning in.
Yeah.
Until we have him on again.
Yeah, exactly. Or his avatar. Now, we're going to try and maybe talk about some of that stuff. But, I want to do a couple things today. I want to talk about the budget a little bit. I don't want to do a whole episode on it, but...
The country still do budgets?
For
this kind of like a big...
For show only, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Okay.
And then we've got a viewer question, I think, that we can address. And then we'll do a little recap on the Jeff Booth episode. And I think they all kind of tie together because it's all... money, monetary policy, and maybe we'll tie it into real estate there somehow as well, right? Are we still, you still want to invest in real estate in Canada?
Yeah, I have to answer that question every day. People call me and it's like, is it still a good time to invest in real estate? It's like, well, I don't know. Is it scarce? Are they making more of it? Like, how does it compare to money? Anyways, we'll get into it.
Let's get into it. Okay, so the budget. Budget came out. We did bit of a preview of the budget. Not that we had any advanced knowledge.
How accurate were we on that?
I think we were pretty accurate.
Yeah. No surprises.
No, I mean, it was your traditional tax and spend budget. Freeland had had a commitment, like, we're not going to have more than a $40 billion budget, which is like... I don't know, me telling my wife, like, okay, well, I'm going out, for the night with the boys, but I'm not going to spend more than like $100,000. That I'm being responsible.
Yeah.
It's my fiscal commitment to you, not more than $100,000. Okay.
Yeah.
She's like, we don't have $100,000. That's fine, but I won't go over it.
Yeah.
So that's our government. Anyways, so the budget, the deficit came in at $39.8 billion. So it's not 40. Right?
Yeah. That's under their target.
Yeah, so that's responsible.
Deficit means...
the shortfall in this year's budget.
Yeah. So the income...
which we just expect.
Minus the expenses is negative.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Nice. It should... Yeah, that's not how it should work. But that is what it is. So a couple of highlights, which most people were up in arms about. The capital gains inclusion rate. Yeah, that's probably what we'll talk mostly about.
Yeah, because as real estate investors, that's a big thing, right? You buy a property, you sell it, and whatever the price went up, well, yeah, you got to pay capital gains on that.
Yeah.
So what does the government want to do now?
What do you think? Has
this budget been passed?
No, it's got to go through the
so we
the
still
House
have
of Commons.
Opportunity to vote it down.
We do, but do you think the NDP is going to bring it down? No.
I don't know.
No, they're just... a wet sock or whatever you want to. I don't even know if that's the if that's a saying, but they're a wet sock coalition partner.
Dad joke for the day. Dad joke
there you
for the
go.
Day.
It has to go through the House of Commons, but it generally will. If it didn't, we could have an election. But
so what's the capital gains?
Okay, so capital gains in general is when you you have an investment. So this is not income tax. Income tax is like you make, 50 grand in a year and the government takes whatever percentage of that. And that's your income tax. But this would be outside of that. And so it's interesting, right? You make money, you have income, you pay tax on that income.
Yeah.
If you have money left over, well, you can invest that. So this is money that's already been taxed.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like you made 50 grand. Let's say you paid 15,000 in tax. It's not like you could say, well, I'm going to go invest some money, so don't tax me on that because this is going to be good for the economy and for people. No.
Yeah.
You're paying tax on that. So let's say you've got $5,000 left that you can
You went
invest.
from having 50,000, you got taxed, and now you have 5,000. Sounds like Canada.
Yeah, depending on your tax bracket, you could be close to 50% in taxes, right? In income tax. But in any case, you're taking money that was already taxed, you invest that, and then if you do well, guess what? You're paying tax again. So you're paying tax on money that was already taxed, which is like, that's ridiculous, right?
And so now at the proposed budget, they're going to increase the capital gains tax.
Yeah, so the way it works now is if you have a capital gain, and for us it would be real estate. So if you buy a house and then you sell it and you have $100,000 gain, right now how it works is you're taxed on that $100,000, but you're only taxed on 50% of it. So you would be taxed on $50,000. So that would be added to your income for the year.
Yeah, and then
you're taxed at your marginal rate.
Right. So if you do have a big capital gain, your income goes up quite a bit, right? And you jump into a different tax bracket.
Yep.
And
so you got to plan that out.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if you can, so most people will be like, okay, I'm going to do that in a corporation. So the corporation will pay could pay the capital gain and, be taxed at a lower rate. And this is how a lot of people have their real estate, maybe not like their first home, but if they're doing this seriously, they'll be investing in corporations because you get preferential tax treatment.
Yeah, call Mark for that.
Yeah, don't call me. Call an accountant.
Okay.
So anyways, they're going to increase the capital gains
Inclusion
rate? Decrease. Yeah, increase the inclusion rate, which is like hard to understand, but they're just going to charge you more tax. So there's still a $250,000 floor. So if the first $250,000 capital gains, you're still going to be taxed at half of that amount.
Yeah.
Anything above that, you're going to be taxed at 2/3 of that amount.
Which
so
is
it's a pretty
decent jump.
Yeah, it's a pretty decent jump.
So that's incentivizing people to not try to make more money or invest in things.
Or sell their stuff before June 25th, 2024, which is when that comes into effect.
Or not sell it at all.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to navigate this, you're either I get out now while the tax is still low, or I never sell.
Yeah. I mean, or possibly you wait for the next government and hopefully it gets repealed.
Yeah.
Does that happen? Very rarely
Yeah.
do taxes go down, but it could happen. And so the whole argument against this is that this is investment.
Yeah.
In product, that leads to productivity generally.
To job growth, that leads to
and we shouldn't be doing that because that's a bad idea. That's kind of generally accepted wisdom, right? So the government has come out with some numbers and they said, well, no, it's not true. And this is only going to affect 0.13% of the population. And it's like, and this is where I get my blood pressure just goes up because you're blatantly lying. This isn't true, and you're just putting this out so that people can repeat this and say it's just for the ultra wealthy.
Yeah,
and it's like, no, it's not, because it's not just for a set group of people. This group changes every year because when you have capital gains,
you sell an asset. And the next year, it turns out you don't have that asset. So you're no longer the guy selling the assets.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're no longer one of these super rich Paris. I mean, because that's what's behind this, right? Is that if you were in that category, we've talked about this before, you obviously got your money somehow from trampling on poor people.
Yeah.
You've exploited people because we have either oppressors or the oppressed.
Yeah.
And we've just accepted that narrative, which is just Marxist. And, therefore, anything you do to those people, whatever, right? But it's not true. So if you've owned a house in Southern Ontario, and let's say you've had that for 4 years, well, do you feel, and just one house, do you feel like you're in the top 0.13% of Canadians? Are you a rich parasite? Like, no, probably not. Maybe you're like a working class person who was able to buy a home and buy an investment property, and now you have that. And like, if you want to sell it, well, now that means you're one of these ultra wealthy. It's like, it's not true.
Yeah.
Because, the value of that home is probably increased by more than $250,000. So if you want to sell it, well, guess what? You're going to pay even more tax.
Even if it did directly affect the 0.13%, whatever number that is, it also has like kind of a knock-on effect on other people too, right? It's like, well, that guy actually created all the jobs, and turns out he can't create as many jobs, so all you don't have any jobs.
Yeah.
Or like, he used to invest in housing and create hundreds of thousands of housing units, and now he can only create 2. So now you can't have a place to live. Like,
well, I mean, the thing with money is it's going to go the most efficient route
where it's treated best.
Yeah.
Money
So
goes where it's treated best.
Yeah. So, personally, I've had a number of people since the budget come up to me and say, like, I know we talked to you. I've heard about you doing stuff in the States and like whatever, but all of a sudden now I'm interested in that, right?
Because they see the capital gains tax going up.
Yeah. So
wasn't there a thing in the States too about?
Yeah, they're also increased, but they're still not as bad as we are.
Right.
And it's an election year, so that could change. But it's just that general climate, right, where people are like, this is enough, right? You're taxing us to death.
Yeah.
And
there is a threshold for people, right? And at a certain point you cross that and people start thinking about other options. Like, well, maybe this is not the best place to live.
A lot of people, I'm having that conversation with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's the productive class.
It's the weirdest thing that people are actually talking about that. Like 10 years ago, you would never.
No.
Canada was great. It was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, it was the best country in the world, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not 10 years.
And now you're looking at other countries like El Salvador. I'd rather move.
Right, yeah. I've seriously looked at, Central American countries where it's like, holy cow, maybe you're not paying the government, but you're paying some local gang. So, whatever. But that's still better than here.
They're not taxing
than the gang that is running this country. No, but it takes aim at so my argument is that this is not at the wealthiest 0.13% of people. As ludicrous, right? Because there's so many people that could fit into this category. And that changes every year. If you're a doctor or a lawyer with a private practice and you want to retire and sell it, that affects you. If you've got real estate and you're going to sell it, that affects you.
Yeah.
If you're an entrepreneur, right? They've also increased the capital gains inclusion rate for entrepreneurs, right? And there's a minimum limit for, there's an exclusion limit, I think, of $1.25 million. Which would be capital gains free if you like sell your business or sell shares in a business. And you're like, oh, it's $1 million. Like, obviously that's for these uber wealthy people who are jet setting off to Europe. It's like, no. Yeah. What if you're 60 or 65 years old and you spent your life building a business? Yeah. Well, I would hope it would be worth a few $1 million.
It better be.
Because a few $1 million doesn't go far, right? That's $1 million is the cost of a home.
Yeah.
Give or take. So it's not that much money, right? We got to stop thinking of $1 million as like uber wealthy. It's not. That's middle class, and we're destroying the middle class. And Brent, I'm mad about it.
All right, well,
banging the desk.
I'm mad because I went to go pick up beer bottles with my son, and we only get 10 cents for them. And I used to get 10 cents for them when I was a kid.
Really?
And like I don't know, like. Shouldn't you get like $1 for each one?
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's inflation. So they haven't raised that,
No, there is no beerflation.
No.
No, I shouldn't say that. No bottleflation. The cost of beer, I think, has gone up.
Okay.
I haven't bought beer in a long time. Okay, alternative minimum tax. This was introduced as a concept in the 2023 budget. It's now being codified. And basically...
They just keep making that tax code so easy to understand. Right? Like every time it's like, wow, there's so much clarity here that...
Oh man. What? Yeah. So I don't know if you've heard who is it? The grumpy accountant or whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name now.
Oh, I forget. Yeah.
But he gets so mad about this too. And rightly. He's like, why don't we just have a flat tax?
He gets money off of it though, because he's an accountant and he gets paid to decipher this stuff.
He does, but he doesn't want to.
Okay.
He's like, we should just have a flat tax.
Yeah.
And like in the UK, where the government actually does your tax return.
What we're doing here, investing in real estate, we don't really want to invest in real estate either, but it's just the only way to protect your wealth.
Yes, like it's not like we're in love with real estate and like unclogging toilets.
You were describing what you got to do afterwards with a shovel.
Yeah, I have to go shovel a load of dog poop out of a property. And
you love that, don't you?
Like I got to clear the grass of all of it, shovel it, mow the grass, get rid of the garbage from this tenant. Like, yeah, it's not the dream thing that you
aspire to,
but it's like this is this is part of our property management company, but it's still in real estate because we're like, this is the sector we want to be in.
Yeah.
Because this is going to protect us from inflation. And it's just, it's ridiculous, right? That this is where and the more, the government doesn't understand that. Like the more they add taxes and decrease productivity, the more people are going to invest in things like real estate as opposed to productive businesses, which is where
what was the thing you mentioned?
Should be. Oh, alternative minimum tax. See,
okay.
you got me all
what is that?
Distracted. So I won't go into, like, it's a big long thing, but basically it means they want to get their money somehow or other. And so you used to be able to, it affects people with capital gains and tax credits.
Right.
So specifically tax credits through things like donations. So you could be like, okay, here's my tax bill for the year. Well, I can do some capital gains stuff, sell some of this stuff and, reduce that income maybe, or reduce the taxable income. And I can also give a bunch of money in donations, and that will reduce my tax to zero or, to very little. So what they're saying is, okay, you can still do that, but we're putting a minimum threshold on that so that, if you have a lot of donations, it's only get up to a certain point. So again, what are you going to do? You're going to decrease charitable donations.
Yeah.
Right? Because people are going to go to whatever that level is and probably go there.
Yeah.
In the case of like Christian giving, okay, probably you're still going to give.
Yeah.
But overall, it's not good. So yeah, there's a bunch of other things. The other highlight I wanted to point out.
You had was all the good things, right?
No, that's here. I'll show it to the
that side of the page.
It's blank. This is stuff I want to talk about. If you can't see it, I'm showing a blank paper.
Okay. What was
the other highlight I wanted to point out is the support for halal mortgages.
Yeah.
So we're talking about mortgages for Muslims, basically, and like I'm not opposed to that. Like,
do you just have to identify as a Muslim, or you got to prove it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
All right.
Well, so they're going to be more expensive, right? There are some options out there now. They're more expensive than a regular mortgage, and the whole idea is. But
in the Muslim faith, you can't charge interest, so
it's usury. Right, kind of like in Jewish.
A Muslim wouldn't take a mortgage, traditionally speaking.
Yeah.
Or it wouldn't really jive with their faith.
Yeah, I mean, so there's tons of Muslims who have regular mortgages, and maybe they're just not as observant as others, or not as hardcore, whatever the case may be. But it irks me, not because I don't want Muslims to have access to mortgage products, like that's fine, but it's just pandering by Trudeau, right? When churches are being burned, he's got nothing to say. 250 some odd over the last few years. As soon as there's an incident at a mosque, he flies down there and he's over there hugging people and crying and doing his thing, right?
Yeah.
Which, okay, yeah, you support all your citizens, that's fine, but not at the exclusion of other ones.
Yeah.
So what irks me is that it's just pandering for votes, right? You got massive immigration from majority Muslim countries. And then you're introducing these measures. It's like come on, man. You think nobody sees through that?
Yeah.
Like it's just irritating, and it's a little bit comical, I think, because for Muslims who are that observant that they will not take a regular mortgage, right? They're serious about their faith. They are not fans of Trudeau.
Yeah, no.
Because of all of his woke policies. They're the ones who are protesting, who are in these parents' protests against schools because of all the policies in these schools. There's a big Muslim turnout for that because they're like, we don't want our children learning this
And
stuff.
they also can't get a mortgage, so they probably don't have a house to go, and they go to all the protests. So now he gives them a mortgage to have a place to
they
live.
would find ways around it, right? And like private lenders, whatever. But my point is, he's not going to win any votes with this because anybody who's that interested in that,
lose votes.
That observant, they're not supporting him anyway. So, anyways, it's just further. I don't know. So we have
successful budget,
a government that is taking more and more debt. And that's what we need to do in a debt-based system, right?
Yeah.
The debt keeps
that
going
was
and
Jeff
going.
Booth's whole chat.
Yeah, which we're still trying to unravel. But we had a question come in.
Yeah.
And so I was going to write like a 1,000-page response. I'm like, I don't know. That's probably not going to be good. But what was the question?
What is Bitcoin based off of? If our currency and the world's currency gets destroyed, what will give Bitcoin its worth?
So my answer is the destruction of those currencies will give Bitcoin its worth, right? As a short answer.
Yeah.
And that's precisely what gives Bitcoin its worth. So we've talked about like what is money, right? And there's a whole bunch of things that it is, but there's two things.
What gives something in general value?
Yeah. So money is a store of value, and it's a medium of exchange. And it's
I think trusted. We can't downplay this question because it is true that if you've never really kind of looked at Bitcoin closely or money in general, then maybe this is a totally valid question, right? So I don't want to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Flippantly. Well, if the U.S. dollar goes to zero, then Bitcoin will be the thing of value because I think the question is more like, well, what's behind Bitcoin itself, right? Like, what is Bitcoin based off of? And I don't know if we've covered that in depth in this show. Okay, maybe we have, but Mark needs a second Coke.
Oh yeah, I got pretty worked up.
Here, have some of this dandelion root.
Yeah, no, it is a fair question because we rag on inflation and the government and the budget and deficits, and it's okay. So fine, you beat me into submission, and our dollar eventually will go to nothing. Yeah. But then, so isn't everything just destroyed then? Right? You have Bitcoin, which is worth I don't know right now $80-something thousand Canadian.
Zero.
Right? Isn't it all going to go to zero?
Zero in what?
Well, exactly. So you can't think of Bitcoin in fiat terms, right? We measure it that way. And Jeff Booth talked about this, right? He's like, you have to think about it in Canadian pieces of paper.
Yeah. What gives Canadian dollars value? They're just, if you say it as in, here's my two Canadian pieces of paper.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, that's a little bit of a different, or here's my Argentinian pieces of paper.
Yeah. And they just have a bigger number on them.
Yeah. And then you kind of realize like, oh yeah, it's all kind of a bit of a Ponzi scheme. And it's like, what is it actually based on?
Yeah.
It used to be based on gold.
Yeah.
Every dollar had an ounce or whatever of gold corresponding to it, and that changed over time. But now there's nothing, so it's just based on trust.
Well, and the reason it was based on gold before, and there is a good reason, right? It's historical. It's everybody in society tries to find a way to store the value of their time and labor, and that's what money is. It's a vehicle to store your value into the future, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're out there looking for a place to store your wealth or store your value into the future, you try and find something that's scarce, right? So that, if I own like one of these and all of a sudden there's 10,000 more of them, it's like, oh, okay, well, this is not really valuable, right?
Yeah.
But if you only own one, there's only one out there, like, yeah, okay, now it's scarce. Well, that's going to be a good store of value into the future. So what is there in nature when you look around that has scarcity to it, that's also durable, that will last into the future, and that you can like use to transact with people, right? You can divide it into smaller pieces and give Mark some, right? So I'm storing my value of my time into the future, and let's say the value of my time is really high because I'm so valuable. And I got all this value to store, and I want to spend a little bit on Mark's Coca-Cola there. Like, I got to give him a little fraction of, right? I have to be able to divide it a little piece. So I give him, so naturally, like, we went through this in so much detail, but like gold became the thing, right? Oh, I got to click the camera so you can see how beautiful Mark is. But yeah, you try and find a medium that allows you to do all of those things, right?
And people naturally gravitate towards that thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Because
the only reason...
If you don't, you're kind of like, you know, the next generation rolls around. It's like, well, you picked the other thing that wasn't a good store of value. Well, where's your value, right?
Yeah.
Turns out you lost it.
And it changes, right? I just heard somebody talk about whale oil.
Really?
Which is curious. And I haven't verified this, but I saw it on the internet, so it must be true.
You're at like the beauty store.
Getting my beard done.
Yeah, walk into Shoppers Drug Mart. Hi, how are you? Try this whale oil.
No, but that used to be, like, whaling was a huge industry.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think 1903 or something is when it changed. It was like, that's where you got your, like, oil for lighting and for all kinds of uses.
In Albany, we're in Australia. It's a big whaling station there.
Oh, okay.
A big museum, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And they also have, I think in Jerusalem, they have the whaling wall.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the same.
Yeah, that's just covered in
there's a lot of
oil
whales.
and grease.
Anyways, no, but like in, I think a year and a half or something,
Yeah.
it was done. It was gone because of oil. Oil. I don't know. What would you call it? Petroleum. Right? The whaling industry was just decimated overnight. And so anybody who had their money in that store of value, they lost it very quickly. And so, my point is, like, things will change, technologies change, and the money or the value flows to the best money that's out there or the best thing that will hold wealth. And for us, we think real estate is a great one because land is tangible, physical. It's not, it's not going anywhere, but it's not good as a medium of exchange.
Yeah, like how do you cut me off a piece of your grass and
we'll throw some mud at you, right?
I'll add it to my stack.
So gold, silver have been those things for a long time, have been those stores of value. And then the US dollar was backed by gold.
And when you say backed by gold, it's just the gold was money and everyone
gold was the store of value.
But the tricky thing with gold is that you can't really, like, if you store it in your house and somebody breaks in and takes your gold, well, like, there goes all your wealth, right? That you're storing for the future. Yep. So you put it in a bank, right? That's the smart thing to do. And they custody it for you. And then what do they give you in return? They give you a little thing that says,
a receipt.
Yeah, here, you give us this much gold. You can come back anytime and get your gold. Here, it represents one unit of that.
Yeah, and that was like an anonymous
hence
thing.
Debt.
Yeah,
because now the thing that you hold
that was
in your
a debit
is
to your account.
Yeah.
But then people realize, like, hey, I can just instead of going back to the bank, trading in this receipt for some gold and then paying you with the gold, I can just pay you with the paper.
Yeah. I'll just give you the paper and you go back to the bank and get the gold.
Yeah. Or you know what? We'll just leave it in the bank, and we'll all just transact with these pieces of paper, which, like, Jeff Booth was not far off when he said, think of Canadian pieces of paper.
Yeah.
Now we're digital, but that's the idea, right? And then we've gone through this, how central banking, like and fractional reserve banking.
The temptation is for the bank to have the gold, and instead of printing one paper, they print 10 papers because nobody will ever know because nobody comes back to get the gold anyways.
Exactly. And once in a while they do, and then we're in trouble. So, but anyway, so we've gone through that. So we have essentially this paper money that is now not backed by anything.
Yeah.
And we have a credit-based system. We've gone through that as well, right? Where inflation happens. And this is why eventually currencies will go to zero because the system, the debt is too heavy for the system to bear.
And so his question here is if our currency and world currency gets destroyed, and Jeff Booth has a thing in his book, and he talks about the age of inflation is already over. Like, we have the currency is destroyed. Like, you can't pay it back.
Well, there's no way for us to recover.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're bankrupt.
Yeah.
Like at a certain point, you're bankrupt.
Yeah.
And you might keep going for a few months.
Yeah.
And you don't know it, or other people don't know it, but you are in fact insolvent.
Yeah. Like there's
You
not enough
cannot
money
repay your
coming
debts
in
ever.
to pay out what you got to pay.
There's no hope of that. And I think that's what Jeff Booth is saying, right?
Yeah.
We're at that stage.
Yeah, we're at that stage globally with all the governments and all the currencies in the world.
Yeah.
That there is too much debt and we can't pay it back. And the only way we can pay it back is by making more debt to pay it back.
Yeah, which is another just side note, another thing that irritates me, because the government has also been releasing these things saying like, we are like the second best for debt in the G7 and that. It's like, no, you're you're lying again. You're out and out lying. We are the worst. We should not be in the G7. You're the absolute worst. And
Canada is?
yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's a couple ways you can look at it. If you count total debt, we're a banana republic. Now, some people will say, well, but that includes consumer debt, a lot of which is mortgages on homes, which are backed by something tangible. So you shouldn't. So, okay, take mortgage debt out of it. We're still terrible. We're still far worse off than any, like even G20.
Yeah.
Because they don't include things like CPP and QPP.
But even if we're comparing ourselves to all the other G7 countries, they're all going down too, right? So
it's like
we're not going down as fast as all those guys are going down, right?
No, but the point is, even comparatively, we are much worse than many other countries, and the government is just cherry picking these little numbers to make it look, and it's just not true.
Yeah,
we're worse. Anyways, as a side note. Back to the destruction of our currency. So, yeah, the question is, like, if all this happens, if this really happens, which, like, it mathematically
can't not
has to happen, at least the currency has to be revalued.
Yeah. And,
you know, a lot of people are, Ben Rabbit talked about this a while back, like, probably bad news for the Canadian dollar over the next while. And I'm seeing a lot more talk about this now, just, you know, on Twitter and other platforms where people are like, yeah, it really looks bad for the Canadian dollar. Like, are we going to go to 50 cents compared to the US dollar? Like, yeah, it's possible. And, you know, maybe that's a short-term thing. But our dollar is not doing well. And, so it may be destroyed. So the whole point is this is a credit-based system. A debt-based system is a better way to say that. And yeah, that will probably happen, or it's a good likelihood that will happen. It'll all go to zero. So you want to be in something that is outside of that system, because anything you have in that system is going to be revalued.
Yeah, and that's the thing Jeff Booth was talking about with Galileo, right? Like, he could see outside the system because he had a telescope.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you know, the world is not what we think it is because I have this and I can see it differently. If you look inside the system, you just can't see it.
Yeah. Good guy, by the way. I sold him the glass for the telescope, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that beard is old, man.
But yeah, and that's kind of...
It's like, hey, check it out. It is round.
Anyways, that's precisely the point. If it all goes to nothing and is revalued... Well, you want to have something that's not in that system. So for us, like, real estate is a good option. You could argue gold would be an option as well, because again, it's tangible. It's not based on the dollar. It is denominated in dollars.
Let me just try and think
Bitcoin is outside of that system. It is not a debt-based system.
Yeah, and the reality is that if the U.S. dollar, the whole world currency, whatever, collapses, okay?
Yep.
That doesn't change the need for human beings to try and store the value of their time into the future. Right?
Yeah.
To kind of think about that on those lines again. I keep going back to this, but like, you're still going to wake up, you're going to do your things that you have to do to eat and survive. And then any extra work that you do that you don't consume, you're going to try and store into the future. So you're still going to look for something.
Yeah.
Right. And we've seen this in places where there's hyperinflation. Like, the minute that the currency is destroyed or goes down in value, people start buying things. Like, they buy a couch or they buy like anything that is not currency. Right.
Yeah.
Because those things are more scarce and hold their value into the future longer, even though it might be like, it'll hold into the future for 1 year or like 3 months, or in a case of like food, like, you know, a couple days, or weeks.
Well, a washing machine. At least I know in 6 months I can trade this washing machine for a bunch of food.
Yeah. Equal value. Yeah, exactly. So just because the currency gets destroyed doesn't change the behavior of human beings and their
need to store value.
Right?
Yeah.
So the question is, well, what other alternatives are there out there for human beings to do this? Like, look at the different vehicles out there. Are we going to go to gold? Like, would you rather, if the whole world currency gets destroyed and you're still looking to store your value, would you rather go to gold? Yeah, I think a lot of people will choose gold, right?
Yep.
But some people might choose other things, right? Like real estate. Maybe you own real estate, but it's just not. It's not a very money-like thing, right? When you own real estate, you can't, like we said, you can't transact.
It's not liquid. Yeah.
So you want to try and find something that has more optimal properties of money. And when you look at Bitcoin, it's kind of a new category in and of itself.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for a way to store your value, well, that's something that's growing. That's something that has properties that all the current options don't have, right? And maybe its digital form is hard to understand, because I think one of the questions this person asked was like, what is it based off of?
Yeah.
Right? It's just software. Like, how do I know? Well, yeah, you need to look at it and try and understand it better.
Yeah, but that's where you go back to the properties of money, what has been money in the past, what it will be in the future. You always kind of go to gold, but again, it's clunky, it's hard to use. Bitcoin solves those issues. And what is it based on? It's based off energy.
Yeah, it's technically based off of energy.
Yeah, it is like a store of energy.
It's the tie to the real world is energy, because, in order to produce Bitcoins, you need to spend real world energy.
Yeah. So there is an input that goes into it. And if you look at it that way, you're storing that energy into the future, and that energy may become more valuable over time. But I think it's important to note that this is something outside of that system, and it's precisely because of the devaluation of the current system and its eventual destruction that gives it its value. If our current system was not inflationary, was not debt-based, we wouldn't need it.
Yeah.
We would have a good store of value in Canadian dollars.
Yeah, we wouldn't look for something else.
Yeah, because those Canadian dollars would increase in value over time. But like the way our system is built.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, that would be something. But that's just not what they're designed to decrease in value over time.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers that question a little bit.
If your money increased in value over time, you would want to work and save your money. But if your money loses its value over time, what's the point of working and saving your money? Like, you just want to get, you want to get the free handout kind of thing, right? I just keep going back to that. Like, well, why would I save this? I would just, I'd work, eat, and then
spend it.
Yeah, spend it. Kind of like get some stuff quick. I don't know. Is that what we see all around us, Mark?
I think it is. I think it is.
We're just putting off the whole trying to decipher Jeff Booth part of your list there.
Yeah, that's all my note says is Jeff Booth.
So his whole thing is technology is developing at a faster and faster rate. And as technology develops, it should make things easier for us. It should make us more productive. It should make our lives better. Things should get cheaper. And he was saying, prices should fall exponentially if we see technology developing, right? But why don't we see prices falling, right? Like, if you look at the world around you, you see prices going up. I mean, some prices fall, like you talk about big screen TV, whatever, technology develops and this thing goes down, but then the price comes back up too, right? He's arguing you should see that everywhere in all general, kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because if you look at every bit of technology that we have now, it is, it's arguably better than it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
In most cases.
Yeah.
And, you can argue about the benefits of said technology, but just from an absolutely like an objective point of view, phones are, cell phones are so much more useful than the first cell phone, than the first telephone.
Yeah.
Right? Because of all the technology that they have. Cars are that's a bad example. Cars at least have more technology in them, whether or not it works and how durable
and then
they
one
are.
of his arguments is that technology makes things abundant.
Yep.
right? Like, everybody has everything on their phone. Okay, everybody, like, yeah. But if something's abundant, it should be cheap or free, right? Like he gave the example of oxygen in the air. Well, like, how critical is oxygen for your survival? But why don't you pay for it? Well, it's because it's abundant. It's so abundant that, like, you couldn't start a business selling oxygen, but unless it's scarce, which is like, you're a scuba diver or like you're in outer space and it's scarce, like oxygen is scarce there and it's necessary. So you pay for it. Right. So he's arguing that, well, technology will slowly or faster and faster make all sorts of things more abundant, which means they should be basically free.
Yeah.
Right.
So then why isn't a side note, I could totally see the government charging for oxygen, by the way, right? An
oxygen tax, your carbon tax, your input and output, excrement tax.
Toronto has this, they call it the rainfall tax. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, okay.
Right? The more hardscaped area you have, the more tax you'll pay, like on a property.
Yeah.
I
just have an
ridiculous.
evaporator on my property that kind of evaporates it back up, and then
what is that? Your shingle roof?
Just the sun, yeah.
Oh, okay.
When it shines, it kind of.
But yeah, we shouldn't talk too loud about an oxygen tax because
I'll give you some ideas.
Yeah.
Christia Freeland is listening, and the next budget.
So then why isn't everything cheaper? And that's what Jeff was talking about, and how technology actually, there's sort of that opposite and equal reaction, which was hard to digest, right? But I think we kind of came to the conclusion that it's because we're in a debt-based system, so that if you're going to spend your money, or if there's investment in something, every dollar that exists comes with debt attached. And so if there's more investment and there's more dollars being created, we can have increased productivity. We can have the calculator app on the phone, whatever, but somewhere somebody's got to pay for that. And that comes from debt. So if we're increasing our productivity, we're also increasing our money supply, because it's not like we have a fixed amount of money that goes around and that goes from one person to another, maybe to this company, to that company, until they use it for productive stuff, and then it goes back out. Like, no, it'll stay there, but the economy as a whole grows. So if you want more investment comes from credit, right? From the banks lending. That's
only way
essentially where investment comes from.
The only way things grow is through easy credit. The only way the system grows is through more debt growth.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And so that growth can lead to things like technology, deflationary technology. But it's almost like the system needs to grow at a certain pace, right? We've discussed that. That's inflation. So let's say that's 2%. When you add something that's deflationary, well, the system has to grow that much more to compensate for it, because it has to grow. It can't not grow. It has to, because there's debt, and the interest on that debt has to be paid. So it has to grow. And if everything being equal, it'll grow at 2%, let's say. But if you add deflationary technology, it must grow at a quicker rate to account for the investment into those technologies.
Oh, and the fact that they can't capture the tax on it, right?
Yeah, I think, you had had an example of like Zoom, right?
Yeah, so if you're, let's say, pre-Zoom.
You can just see archaeologists in 500 years going, well, this is the pre-Zoomian era.
I presume that this happened in that era. So before Zoom, let's say you wanted to meet with 5 people. Well, they all had to have a car or some means of transportation. They all had to pay for fuel or whatever. They all had to, drive on a road, let's say, and you had to fix and repair that road. You have to go to an office, which needs to be constructed and taxed and whatever. So and then they need a desk to sit at, they need whatever, right? So that could be, a huge opportunity for the government to kind of capture those different things, right? Like there's a factory to produce desks. There's a factory to produce roads. There's road factory. There's a factory to produce cars, right? Like all of these different things the government can tax along the way, and those contribute to the GDP of the country, right? And if you're saying it's a debt-based system, See, this is just my attempt at understanding what he's talking about. So if there's a debt-based system, we have to grow because we need more money to pay for the debt. But if you're taking away things that they would have otherwise taxed, and it's making everyone's lives easier, and people are using it, right? Jeff Booth said, like, you don't use things that have less value. You use, like, Zoom is more valuable because now I can get 3 meetings done or 4 meetings done in the time it took me one meeting, and it costs me nothing, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm way more productive, and I'd rather use that technology. But the government's looking at it like, hey, well, I can't tax any of this stuff. And Zoom is one example, right? Like, how many other different things have there been? Even just like FaceTime on your phone to different people just for leisure, even like, you wouldn't have to go and see people as often because you have, you can talk to them every day on your phone.
Yeah.
And yeah, like he uses the example of the calculator app. I'm just thinking, yeah, like there used to be physical calculators and you had to go to the Walmart to buy one and they're like $30 and like, tax. But now you just have an app and I don't know.
Well, and government spending doesn't decrease. Almost never. So
that's a surprise.
Yeah, what a shock, right? But I mean, we've seen that. I'm just trying to look up some deficit trackers here. But when you have increased productivity and, less tax capture from these activities, like, where's it going to come from? Maybe there's more, maybe you're more productive and you're earning more income, or your company is
and you're getting taxed
doing more and there's more taxes happening there. But probably that's not making up for all the tax that they're missing. So they've got to add to the money supply, right? Because deficits keep getting bigger. So it's not even like they're just maintaining the status quo and like, oh, there's less tax revenue because of technology. It's like it's getting worse. So it would have to get worse, just that they would have to print more money to keep the same amount of tax income. But it's actually getting even worse because they're increasing spending at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is just like, counterintuitive.
Oh, okay. Another thing I'm trying to think to try and parse this out a bit is, like, I guess you could call it productivity theft. So people are out there, entrepreneurs, trying to make everything easier in the world, developing technology, making it better. Everyone else is responding by using it, right? Because it makes their lives easier, there's more value in it for them, right?
Yeah.
I get more done in less time. I can enjoy free time. So if we're saying that technology develops exponentially, then we should also see at the same time those gains flowing to society. Like, we should see people's lives getting easier exponentially.
We should,
yeah. So like, if that's true, if technology is developing exponentially and making all these things easier, faster, better, and whatever, and cheaper, you should see people having less to do, like more free time. They should have like more money because they're spending less on all the stuff.
Yeah.
Right. But do you see that? And I think when you look at it, you don't see, I think that's where Jeff Booth's going. Like, technology is developing quick. We don't see the other side of the equation. Like, where is the gains going? Like, the gains have to show up somewhere.
Yeah.
And they're not showing up in our lives getting better. So somebody is in between the tech guys making it easier and us getting the benefits of it and taxing it or stealing it. And that productivity theft, I think, is what he's pointing the blame on the system, like the credit-based system, the debt-based system.
Yeah.
Saying, well, the whole system is set up that, the first Canadian dollar that was lent into existence, that needed to be paid back with interest. Okay, there you go. Now you need to print another dollar, and that one needs to be paid back with interest. And now you need to print two, and
and you can do that for a long time, and we have.
Yeah, like 50 years.
Yeah, but
like older than you.
I mean, I'm looking at Canadian government debt, right? So
Can you even see it all at once?
Well, it's interesting because
it's just a number. Huh?
It's like kind of growing exponentially, right? 591 billion in 2012, 620 in 2013. It increased a little bit. right? And then 2017, you see a bigger jump. 2018, right? So we're seeing deficits of maybe $6 billion in 2014.
Yeah.
2 billion 2015. All of a sudden it went to like I'm just doing some 12 billion.
I can't see this
12.
chart, but I'm just assuming it's kind of like a hockey stick, because that's the Canadian.
A little bit, yeah. I can't share it right now, but
our prime minister is trying to make all the debt graphs look like hockey sticks.
It's patriotic.
Yeah, he's quite patriotic,
right? 721 billion in 2020. Right, that's up from 591, and then you get this huge 2021.
It's like we need a left-handed prime minister
lefty.
to kind of get him to come down,
Right, but this massive increase from 721 billion to 1.05 trillion in 2021, and then we're still up at that.
Yeah, I can't see what you're doing, so you got to tell me what.
Yeah, the numbers are getting bigger, Brent. That's
bigger.
Okay. Next time I'll share it maybe on the screen. But the point is they're getting bigger in this huge growth, especially 2021. Oh, well, it was the pandemic. Like we know that's not really, it was an excuse to increase the money supply. But the point is the deficits keep getting bigger and bigger. Like, yeah, the debt's growing because there's interest on it, but the deficits are also growing like at a ridiculous amount in bigger and bigger amounts every year.
Maybe we try and figure this out with Bitcoin, like, because his comment at the end, or I think throughout, was kind of, well, Bitcoin is a separate system from the one we have. It's global, so it's operated by these decentralized nodes around the world. Anyone can start one. It's really cheap to start one. Once you start one, you're part of the system, and you can verify the rules of the system. You're incentivized to be a part of the system because you store your wealth in it. Anybody can buy any fraction they want of it. No one can censor that.
Yep.
And so it's kind of just this like open network of like, you can develop on Bitcoin, you can own it, you can send it to whoever you want, peer to peer. No. So he's saying, okay, that's a completely separate system from the one that where everyone's living in now.
Yeah.
And it's deflationary because there's a fixed supply. So right now it has a predetermined inflation curve, which means there is more money being printed in Bitcoin, but it's decreasing every 4 years, and it will eventually go to zero.
Yeah.
And we know that because it's an algorithm, and that's the way the code works. Okay, so if there's a fixed supply and there's a monetary system that we're currently operating on that has an infinite supply and a completely unknown and uncertain supply, everyone's living in that world.
Yeah.
Right? Like 99% of the people in the world live on a monetary system that nobody knows when they're going to print more money. Nobody knows what crisis is going to cause them to double the money supply in 2 years. Nobody knows, anything about it. Even the total money supply, you can't even capture it, right? Like there's no way to figure that out. And he's saying, well, okay, these two are operating in parallel right now. And what do you think is the smart move? To move your money out of this one into that one, or the other way around? And what he's looking at from his like kind of tech world is, all the money is kind of coming out of the one system. He calls it the smart money, but maybe that's because he's in it. But is investing in companies in this other system, right?
And I mean, these are sort of esoteric arguments. Sometimes, like you really got to spend some time looking at it, researching it, thinking about it, studying. But the thing that people don't need to do right now to study is just to look at their living situation, and this is where more interest comes in alternative. Why people are looking outside of Canada or outside of this debt system.
Yeah, where are you going to live? Well, they tax me too much here. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, like just the cost of living. Yeah. That's easy for anyone to understand. You don't need to do research to be like, nothing changed.
You don't have a money printer at your house?
Yeah, like I'm still doing the same job I've had for 5, 10, 50 years, whatever. But I can't afford steak anymore.
Yeah.
Like, why is that?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
This shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a much easier argument, I think, than like, okay, well, let's look at a credit-based system and deficits and, all the stuff we always talk about. Let's just look at,
is there steak on your plate or not?
Oh. Yeah. I used to be able to eat steak.
Yeah.
Now I can't.
Huh.
And what gives?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like something is not right. Something is broken. And that's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And you can see the government's only response is, I guess we got to tax more,
Yeah.
right? To try
And what that does is centralizes the power in the government.
more and more and more.
Oh, right. We're going to have Jeff Booth back on to kind of really figure this out. But
We need some time in between.
Yeah.
Like a year. So, anyways, I hope that answered the viewer question. If not, email us back and we'll try again. But I think that was a good little recap of a little bit about the budget and a little bit about the Jeff.
Yeah. We didn't get into real estate, but that's okay.
Well,
Next time.
the core argument still is that real estate is a good investment at some point. And there's definitely rocky times ahead, especially when our system is not looking so stable.
Yeah.
But it's a tangible thing that you can hold.
Yeah.
And so, for us, it's like real estate and Bitcoin, right? And how much do you want of one or the other?
Yeah.
Right? Bitcoin is not going to produce income, at least not right now.
Yeah. And real estate might not be as big of a store of value if Bitcoin takes over. And that's the stuff that I'm kind of thinking about all the time. It's like, okay, well, Bitcoin doesn't produce income, real estate can. But, right now I look at real estate as this, long-term store of value. But I think Jeff Booth's argument as well was, while real estate might not be the optimal store of value because, it's subject to tax and it's subject, like there's all these other things, right? Whereas Bitcoin is kind of like this pure property that you can own.
Yeah.
Maybe it loses its monetary premium, right?
Yeah.
Real estate does.
For me, it's like, what is that transition period?
Yeah.
So what
And
should
how
I
long?
be doing? How long is it?
Yeah. Is it in 30 years? Is it in 50
Well,
years?
I think this is like a multi-decade transition.
Yeah.
I used to think it was a lot quicker, but just looking at the system, right, and the
Yeah.
U.S. dollar can kick for a lot longer.
Yeah. They got some big thighs.
Big quads, they can kick that can way down the road. So, for me, I think I'm pretty comfortable still being in real estate, still having Bitcoin, absolutely. But as far as something to maybe generate some cash and to have,
And the reality is, like, housing is a need, right? Like you need food, shelter, clothing, right? And shelter, reality is like, people need to live somewhere, and not everybody provides housing as a service or an option, right? So
No.
If you're in that industry, you can do well.
Well, and if we do flip, let's say, if we were in a Bitcoin only system, well, real estate would still have value as shelter, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not the same premium that it has now because of all the things that we've talked about, but it would still have value. It may drop in value, but you could still earn Bitcoin from your real estate. So there you go.
Sweet, man.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Hopefully that, thanks for being on the journey with us, folks, I guess, and hopefully you got something out of that. Until next time.
Steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
And if you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.